IXL section S1, identify linear functions from graphs and equations. Identificar funciones lineares de gráficos y ecuaciones. Okay, now remember a function is a type of relation in which there is only one output value for each input value. All right? A function is going to be an equation that looks like this, where every input only has one specific output. Recuerden que una función es un tipo de relación en la que solo hay un valor de salida para cada valor de entrada. Así que una función luce como lo que está escrito aquí, es una ecuación donde cada valor que tú entras en la función solamente va a tener un valor de salida. Okay, now the graph of a linear function. All right, that has the word linear in it, line. All right, a linear function. When you graph it, if it's a linear function, it's always going to be a straight line. Okay, so a linear function is simply a function that when you graph it, it gives you a straight line. So when you're doing this IXL, if they give you a graph, it's super simple. All you got to do is, if it's a straight line, that means it's a linear function. If it's not a straight line, that means it's a non-linear function. When you see the questions, they're just going to be asking you to choose whether it's linear function or non-linear function. That's how all the questions in this IXL are. You just choose this one or this one. All right, so again, the word tells you it's a linear function because when you graph it, it gives you a straight line. So if it's a straight line, it's a linear function. If it's not a straight line, look at these examples here, it would be a non-linear function. And yes, a straight line means it could be those separated dots are also a straight line. Let me just say that in Spanish. Okay, la gráfica de una función lineal siempre será una línea recta. Okay, así que una función lineal, la palabra te lo está diciendo. En inglés es un linear function, tiene la palabra línea. Okay, cuando se hace ese gráfico, siempre te va a dar una línea recta si es una función lineal. Una función lineal es simplemente una ecuación que cuando yo pongo los valores de x, cuando yo entro los valores de x, los valores de y que salen te dan coordinados que forman una línea recta. Si te dan un gráfico donde no es una línea recta, entonces es en inglés, non-linear function. Una función que no es lineal. Okay, those are the easy questions, or the easiest of the questions. Now let's look at the ones where they're going to give you an equation. Okay, ahora vamos a mirar las preguntas donde te van a dar una ecuación. Y tienen que determinar si es lineal o no es lineal. All right, they're going to give you an equation, and you're going to have to determine, is that a linear function or not? I'm going to go over every type of situation in this video, okay? So if you have any trouble on the IXL, you need to look at the video and just find the examples that are similar to the question you're on, because I'm going to explain every type of question, okay? Yo voy a explicar cada tipo de pregunta que está en el IXL. Así que si están teniendo problemas en el IXL, tienen que mirar el video a los ejemplos que son similares a lo que tienen, porque voy a explicar cada tipo de ejemplo para que no tengan ninguna duda de cómo hacer las preguntas. All right, first thing I got to go over is this. Linear functions. If it's a linear function, it could always be written in slope-intercept form. Okay, I believe you should have already seen this in middle school, like 8th grade maybe. And hopefully you've already seen it this year in Algebra 1. But slope-intercept form is basically, this is the principal way of writing slope-intercept form right here. Y equals mx plus b. You should memorize that if you don't have it memorized, because you're going to see it a lot. Both in Algebra 1 as well as in geometry. It comes up a lot, as well as Algebra 2 if you take it. So slope-intercept form, in slope-intercept form, the number that's written here where the m is, I wrote it right here. The m is where you write the slope of the slope of the line. The slope is a number that measures how steep the line is. And the letter b represents the y-intercept. Okay, the y-intercept is the point where the line crosses the y-axis. All right, now it could also be, look at the forms underneath it. Okay, this is, when you write a function in function notation, remember that the beginning part is going to look like this: f of x, g of x, h of x. That's what it's going to look like. All right, but it means the same thing as y equals mx plus b. They're just putting here either f of x or g of x or h of x, but it's the same thing. So, and by the way, if this is not making sense to you, give me a second. When we start looking at the examples, it'll make more sense. But basically, if it's a linear function, you could always write it in this form, like this, okay? Nonlinear functions cannot be written in slope-intercept form. So if they give you, excuse me, if they give you a nonlinear function, you're not going to be able to write it in this form. En español, funciones lineales siempre se pueden escribir en la forma slope-intercept, ¿ok? Que es esta forma aquí. En esta forma, la letra M representa el slope, el pendiente, ¿ok? La letra M es el número que ponen donde está la letra M, siempre es el slope, que es la medida de la inclinación de una línea. Y la letra B representa el y-intercept. El y-intercept es el punto donde la línea cruza el axis de Y. Cuando enseño algunos ejemplos, esto lo van a entender mejor, ¿ok? Pero por ahora quiero que entiendan que si es una función lineal, siempre se puede escribir en esta forma. Ahora, como es una función, en lugar de escribir Y aquí, lo que van a escribir es f de x, g de x, h de x, pero significa lo mismo que y, ¿ok? Pero se escribe de esta forma y aquí van a tener mx más b, que en un momento les enseño cómo va a lucir eso. Las funciones que no son lineales no se pueden escribir en esta forma. All right, let's look at our first example. These are the easiest examples of the questions that have equations in them, all right? So they're asking you, all the questions are going to be like this. You got to choose whether it's linear or non-linear. So I said, well, let me turn on my pen, that if it's linear, if it's a linear function, you could write it in this form. All right, so right here will be a number. That number will be the slope. Let me just write that here. And right here will be another number. That number will be the y-intercept. Okay, if by any chance you're not too clear on what the slope is or what the y-intercept is, in the next few classes, I'm going to go over that. For today, the main thing you got to know is that if it's a linear function, you could write it in this form. All right? So if you look at this example right here, okay, it says h of x equals, okay, here's a number in front of x, a number in front of x, plus another number. That number is the y-intercept. By the way, it says plus, but if you write minus, that's fine as well. All right, it could be plus or minus. Okay, so yes, this is linear because it's written in this form. Y equals mx plus b, or h of x equals the m is the 6 and the b, the y-intercept is the number 5. So yes, this is linear. Okay, let's look at this one. This one is also linear, and I'll explain why. Okay, in this one, let me write it out here a second. All right, here's x. Is there a number in front of the x? Do you see a number in front of the x? No, there's no number written there. However, when there's no number written in front of a variable, it's understood that there's an invisible 1 there. So there is a number there, it's just not written. But the slope is positive 1. The slope here is positive 1. Okay? And back here, is there a number written here? Yes. It's a fraction, but a fraction is a number. So therefore, the y-intercept is 7 over 9. So in this example, yes, it's linear because the slope is positive 1 and the y-intercept is 7 over 9. So yes, this is linear. It's written in slope-intercept form. So yes, it is a linear function, both of these. All right. Let me explain that in Spanish real quick. Okay. Estos son los problemas más fáciles que le van a dar donde tienen que mirar una ecuación y determinar si la ecuación es lineal o no es lineal. ¿Ok? Así que el primer ejemplo es bien fácil, porque está escrito en slope-intercept form. El número que está al frente de la X es el slope, el pendiente, que es el número 6. Y el número que está, el 5, el número que está aquí atrás es el Y-intercept. ¿Ok? Si no entienden muy bien qué quiere decir slope o Y-intercept, eso lo voy a enseñar más en las próximas clases. Por hoy lo que tienen que entender es que si es una función lineal se puede escribir en esta forma. Y sí, esto está escrito en la forma correcta para slope-intercept form. Así que es lineal, sí. El segundo ejemplo también es lineal. Al frente de la X no está escrito ningún número, pero cuando no se escribe un número al frente de un variable, he entendido que hay un 1 invisible. Así que en este caso el slope es el número 1. Y aquí atrás está el y-intercept, que puede ser una fracción. Una fracción también es un número. Así que el y-intercept es 7/9. Así que sí, esto es una función lineal. All right, now look at these examples. These are easy, but since you guys are new to this, I got to point out something that you may not realize, all right? All of these are linear. Hey, by the way, let me say something else. When I made this video, when I made this PowerPoint, on the top, I'm actually giving you the answer on the top. I'm telling you these are examples of linear functions. So all of these are going to be linear. Okay? When we get to the ones that are nonlinear, I wrote on the top nonlinear. So listen, if you're doing the IXL and you're confused, there's no reason to, because you could just skim back and forth through the video and look at what it says on the top and then look at the examples and just look at the one, like the problems that you're doing. If they look like this, they're linear. If they look like the ones that I say are nonlinear, you put that answer. So I'm basically kind of giving you the answers. So there's no excuses on this IXL. All right? I'm giving you the tools to do it easily. Okay? Let me just say that in Spanish. Arriba yo estoy escribiendo que estos son ejemplos de funciones lineales. Okay, así que básicamente le estoy dando la respuesta. Cuando están haciendo este IXL no tienen excusa. Simplemente pueden mirar el video y chequear los ejemplos que son similares al problema que tienen y mirar si yo estoy diciendo que eso es lineal o no es lineal. Alright, so look at this right here and let me explain why this is linear. On the top, let me just write right here on the top that linear, I'm going to write it with f of x, has to be in this form. Si es lineal, se puede escribir en esta forma. Alright, so look at this one right here. Miren este ejemplo. Okay, what is the slope? ¿Qué es el slope? The slope in this example is the number in front of x, which is -10. El slope en este ejemplo es el número que está al frente de x, que sería -10. Is there a number back here? I don't see a number back here. ¿Hay un número aquí? Yo no veo ningún número. Actually, there is a number back here. Guess what it is? It's also invisible in a way. The number is 0. When it's written like this and there's no slope-intercept written, it's because the slope-intercept is 0. And you always write your math answers simplified. So the reason it's not written is because if you simplify that, any number plus 0 is the same number. So you don't write it because it's understood that if it's not written there, the y-intercept is 0. So make a note of that. If it's written in slope-intercept form and there's no number back here, the slope-intercept is 0. Ok, así que aquí atrás no está escrito ningún número, pero sí hay un slope-intercept. Ok, excuse me one moment. Okay, sorry for that interruption. Okay, así que estaba diciendo que no hay un número escrito aquí atrás, pero eso quiere decir que el y-intercept es 0, pero no se escribe, porque la respuesta en matemáticas siempre se tiene que escribir todo simplificado. Y cuando tú sumas 0 a un número, la respuesta es ese mismo número, así que no se escribe cuando se está sumando 0. Pero tienen que darse cuenta que cuando está escrito así, sí está en slope-intercept form, pero el y-intercept es 0 y por eso no se escribe. Eso es la misma situación para todos estos ejemplos. All right, so it's the same thing with all these examples. All right, so right here in this one, the slope is this. The slope is negative 6 over 5. And the y-intercept is 0. It's not written, okay? Así que es la misma cosa aquí. Este es el slope y el y-intercept es 0. Por eso es que no se escribe. All right? Here, same thing. The slope is negative 8 over 3. And the y-intercept is 0. Okay, la misma cosa. Aquí está el slope y el y-intercept es 0 y no se escribe. So all of these are linear. Todos son funciones lineal. All right, let's look at the next type of example. Okay, now look at this one. Okay, look at what I wrote here. Believe it or not, all of these are written in slope-intercept form. And by the way, you're going to see this in your Algebra 1 class. So pay attention because it's really useful. I'm positive it comes up a lot. I used to teach Algebra 1 for many years. All right. All right. So let me go over this. Esto sale mucho en la clase de álgebra, ¿ok? No solamente en esta clase de matemática intensiva. Todos estos ejemplos están escritos en slope-intercept form. Le voy a explicar por qué. By the way, the only thing that I put wrong in this example is I should have written it like this, but it means the same thing. All right. I should have written them in function notation, and I didn't, but whatever. It means the same thing. Okay, so look. I said that these are written in slope-intercept form, which is this. And let me show you what I mean by that, okay? Todo esto está escrito en esta forma, aunque no lo parece. Déjame explicarle cómo. Okay. Is there an X here? Is there an X anywhere here? No, there's not. You know why? Because the slope is 0. Oh, the slope is 0. The slope is 0, and 0 times anything is 0, so this vanishes, and you're left with y equals 3. That's why it looks the way it does. That's the same thing in all of these examples. The slope is 0, right? So the only thing they're writing is what the y-intercept is. Look at the last one. And look how I'm writing it. Okay, this is truly what exists. But when you simplify it, you're left with this, okay? Lo que yo estoy escribiendo en rojo le está enseñando cómo está en slope-intercept form y lo que está aquí es simplificado. Pero en todo este ejemplo, el slope es 0. All right, so what does that mean? Okay, slope measures how steep a line is, right? Like that or like that. A slope of 0 means a horizontal line. Okay, el slope, el pendiente mide la inclinación de una línea. Ok, si el slope es 0, quiere decir que la línea es una línea horizontal. Alright, so if y equals 3, that's this line, like this. If y equals negative 2, it's this line. If y equals 5, that's this line. And if y equals 0, that's this line right here. Now look, let me throw in an extra quick lesson about something. Because you're going to see examples, today you're only going to see examples like this. But in your algebra class, you're also going to see examples like this. Okay, what's the difference? Okay, these are easier for me to explain. But let me tell you how I like to explain them in a way that you could remember. Okay, look at the y-axis. The y-axis is a vertical line. The y-axis is a vertical line. But when I do the graph of this, it's a horizontal line. When I do the graph of this one, it's a horizontal line. So the way I like to tell people to remember them, okay, is that whenever you have an equation where it's just like y equals a number or x equals a number, it's always going to be either a horizontal line or a vertical line. And it's always going to be the opposite of what the axis that has that letter is. What I mean by that is this. The y-axis is a vertical line, right? So whenever you have y equals a number, it's the opposite of a vertical line, which is a horizontal line, like this. The y-axis is a vertical line. So if I have an equation that says y equals a number, like for example, y equals -2, it's always going to be the opposite of that vertical line, which would be a horizontal line. Now, if I would have had x equals 3, I go like this. The x-axis is horizontal, so x equals 3 will be the opposite of a horizontal line, which would be a vertical line. Like that. Well, that was not... Okay, so x equals -2. Again, the x-axis is horizontal, so x equals -2 will be the opposite of a horizontal line, which is a vertical line, which is like that. I promise you're going to see that in Algebra 1, and hopefully you'll remember my technique, although I think it comes up in intensive math as well, and I'll keep reminding you. But today you're only going to see questions like this. So all I want you to know is that when you see like an example like that, for example, that is linear. That is a linear function. That would be this. When you see this, yes, that is a linear function, which is this. Okay, that's all. If you understood that, those are the examples that you're going to get today. Let me try to say all that in Spanish real quick. Okay, así que en todos estos ejemplos, espera, estaba explicando que una manera de recordarse cómo escribir esta ecuación en un gráfico, porque también hoy no van a ver esto, pero en la clase de álgebra y luego en otras clases de matemática intensiva sí van a haber problemas donde te dan ecuaciones donde dice y es igual a un número y x es igual a un número. ¿Y cómo sabe cuál es la diferencia? Lo que está diciendo es una manera de recordarse cómo hacer el gráfico de estos, de los dos tipos de problemas es, ok, fíjense en que el axis de y es una línea vertical. Ok, siempre cuando tengan y igual a un número, y igual a un número, y igual a un número, va a ser lo opuesto del axis de y. Así que en lugar de siendo una línea vertical, va a ser una línea horizontal. Así que y igual a 3 sería así. Y igual a -2 sería así. Y igual a 5 sería así. Ok, se puede usar el mismo truco para hacer esto. Cuando dice x igual a +3, ok, el axis de x es una línea horizontal, así que x igual a un número va a ser lo opuesto, una línea vertical, que sería así. X igual a -2 sería también una línea vertical, lo opuesto del axis de x. And another way you could remember this, guys, just one more. I know I'm taking a long time on this, but another way you could remember is like this, right? Here's the graph for y equals 3. Wherever I put a dot here, it doesn't matter where, the y coordinate will always be +3. The x coordinate may change, but the y coordinate remains +3. So that's another way you could remember it as well. ¿Ok? Otra manera de recordarse esto es que no importa dónde yo pongo un punto en esta línea para y igual a 3, el coordinado de x cambia, pero el coordinado de y se mantiene +3 donde quiera que se pone un punto en esta línea. Same thing with the other example. Let's say I would have graphed x equals 3. Ok, lo mismo con este ejemplo. If I graph x equals 3, wherever I put a dot, like let's say here, on that line, the x coordinate will always remain 3. It's like backwards now. Okay? Donde quiera que yo pongo un punto en esa línea, el coordinado de x siempre se mantiene +3. Alright, let me do one more here. X is +3, y is 4. So that's another way you could remember it. Eso es otra manera que se pueden recordar. Okay, so let's move on. Now look, I did those because these examples have fractions, and I know fractions all of a sudden, even though it's the same exact thing, some of you guys get confused. So again, on the top it says the answer already. So I don't want to hear any complaints that this is too difficult. It's not too difficult. I'm giving you the answers. Okay, le estoy dando la respuesta. Okay, esto es lo que acabé de hacer, pero tiene una fracción, pero es la misma cosa. Alright, if I write this out completely like in slope-intercept form, without simplifying it, that's what it is. The slope is 0. But 0 times anything is 0, so this vanishes. But this is linear. ¿Ok? Si lo escribo sin simplificar, el slope es 0. ¿Ok? Y solamente cuando se simplifica, luce así. pero el slope es 0, así que sí es una función lineal. Porque cuando el slope es 0 es una línea horizontal. Remember, when the slope is 0, that's a horizontal line. All right. Okay, now these are other types of questions that you're going to get. All these pictures are from IXL, okay? Where these are written in slope-intercept form, but backwards. What do I mean by backwards? All right, let's look at these because let's look at one at a time, okay? Estos están en slope-intercept form, pero al revés. Okay, so look at this first one. Okay, let me first show you something. All right, this part right here, it says plus x over 7. Okay, that actually means this. That means the same thing as this. Because if I multiply 1 times x, the x would be on the top. Or let me say that better. This means 1 over 7 times x. That means 1 over 7 times x, right? Do you agree that that means 1 over 7 times x? Well, if I turn the x into a fraction by going like that, I get x over 7. So when they write x over 7, that means the same as 1 over 7 in front of x. Why am I pointing that out? Because now I have, that's a number in front of x. A number in front of x. If I just change the order so that I put this part in the front and this part in the back, which when you're adding not subtracting, but when you're adding, you could change the order and it means the same thing. Okay? I'm adding here a positive number and a negative number. So anyways, if I write it like that, yes, it's in slope-intercept form, so it is linear. All right? Si lo escribo en esa forma, bueno, primero estaba explicando que esta parte de aquí quiere decir 1 sobre 7 multiplicado por x. Si multiplico 1 sobre 7 por x, cambio el x a una fracción poniéndole un 1 debajo y eso sería x sobre 7, que es lo que escribieron aquí. Pero si lo escribo de esta forma se ve más claramente que hay un número al frente de x. Y si lo cambio de orden, porque cuando se está sumando puedo cambiar la orden. Esto se puede escribir en slope-intercept form, como enseñé aquí. Así que este es lineal. All right, let's look at, before I go to this one, let's look at this one. This one is the same as this. Estos dos son la misma cosa. All right, so again, I could rewrite it like this. And you could also rewrite it like this. You just got to realize that, let me not do that. Just this one, yes, it is in slope-intercept form. The slope is 1 over 7. The y-intercept is negative 1 over 10. Okay? El slope es 1 sobre 7 y el y-intercept es negativo 1 sobre 10. All right, let's look at this one over here. All right, the key to understanding this one is understanding that you could rewrite the way it's written, that means the same thing as this. All I'm doing is separating them and keeping the 5 on the bottom for both of them. Okay, I could rewrite it like that. And if I could rewrite it like this, that means that the back part can be written as this. That's what it means. It means that. And sorry, I'm running out of space. Let me write it over here. If I put the back part in the front, there it's written in slope-intercept form. The slope is 1 over 5 and the y-intercept is negative 4 over 5. All right, so this is linear. Okay. Lo puedo escribir esta parte de aquí, 1 sobre 5 multiplicado por x. Quiere decir la misma cosa. Y si le cambio la orden, porque cuando se está sumando se puede cambiar la orden, el slope sería 1 sobre 5 y el y-intercept sería negativo 4 sobre 5. Let's look at the last one. Okay, first of all, let me rewrite it. All right, all I did is separate them and keep the 2 on the bottom. Okay, now, all right, let me rewrite it one more time like this. So far, everything I've done is the same thing I did in all 3 examples, right? There's an invisible one here. Hay uno invisible aquí. Eso es lo único que he hecho. Um, okay, now look how I could rewrite this. Let's go over here now. Déjame ir hasta aquí porque. All right, now look, I could rewrite this like this. Let me think for 1 second. Yeah. Um, I could rewrite that like that, and that's in slope intercept form. Okay, in case anybody's wondering something, let me show you something. In case anybody's wondering whether I could do that or not, let me ask you a question. What's negative 2 minus 1? Negative 3. If I write it like this, what's negative 1 minus 2? It's the same answer. All right, so in this situation, I rewrote it. Basically, I'm trying to show you that I could rewrite it like that and it means the same thing that was written right here, okay? Aquí le estoy enseñando que sí, lo puedo escribir al revés y que lo que está escrito aquí quiere decir lo mismo que está escrito aquí, aunque lo escribí al revés y estamos restando, ¿ok? Porque negativo 2 menos 1 me da negativo 3, igual que negativo 1 menos 2 también me da negativo 3. Okay, now we're going to go over some examples of answers that are wrong. Okay, ahora tenemos ejemplos de respuestas que están mal. These are non-linear. Again, the answer's on the top. La respuesta está arriba. Te estoy diciendo ya que estos son ejemplos que no son lineal. These are examples that are non-linear. Sorry about that, Bill. I'm recording this at school. All right, so look, the reason these are non-linear, if the x is on the bottom of the fraction, it's non-linear. Okay, because that does not mean the same as what we just saw in the previous example. That would be like me doing this. All right, so no, this is not slope intercept form. If the x is on the bottom of the fraction, it's non-linear. Si la x está en la parte de abajo de una fracción, no es lineal. Okay? If the x is on the bottom of the fraction, it's non-linear. Basically, when you graph that, if you were to graph that, you're not going to get a straight line. Si hacen un gráfico de eso, no van a coger una línea recta. Guys, I got to pause the recording here just one moment. Okay, the other type of examples that are non-linear are if the x, I wrote it on the top, examples of non-linear functions with a radical sign over the x. Okay, the radical sign is this sign right here that you may also call it the square root sign. If you see any problem that has that, a radical sign over the x, that's it. Those are all non-linear. All right, obviously those are more advanced, but if you see those, if you were to graph them, you're not going to get a straight line, okay? Si ven problemas que tienen el signo radical, que este signo, arriba de la X, todo eso, si esos son todo, no son lineares. No son lineales, ¿ok? Así que si tienen el signo radical sobre el X, no son lineales. ¿Ok? El gráfico de esas ecuaciones no te va a dar una línea recta. Okay, eso no lo van a tener que aprender ahora ni nada. Es simplemente saber que si tiene ese signo, ya no puede ser lineal. Okay, and look at these. If you have an exponent, we're almost done here. Examples of nonlinear functions with exponents. So if it has an exponent on top of the x, if it has an exponent on top of the x, they're not going to be linear, okay? Si tienen un exponente arriba del x, no van a ser lineal. All right? So all of these are non-linear. Todos estos no son funciones lineal. If they have an exponent over the x, they're non-linear. Okay, and the last type of non-linear functions are if you have an exponent that's a variable. I mean, I think for today's IXL, we could just say that if it has an exponent, it's going to be nonlinear. But it is possible to have an exponent and still be linear, but the examples you're going to see today are nonlinear. All right, so Right here, notice these have an exponent, and the exponent is a variable. It's the letter x. So all of these are going to be non-linear. Non-linear. I'm getting confused between English and Spanish. Non-linear, okay? Si tienen un exponente que es un variable, tampoco van a ser lineal, okay? Así que todos estos son non-linear. All right? And that covers all the examples that you're going to have in this IXL, okay? Eso cubre todos los ejemplos que tienen en este IXL. All right, so when you're doing it, if you're having questions, look, just jump back and forth in the video and find, okay, which example looks like the one I just got. Okay, and that way you'll be able to tell if they're linear or not. En lo que lo están haciendo, si tienen pregunta o duda, pueden brincar en el video y encontrar dónde están los ejemplos como el que tengo ahora. Y ahí te estoy diciendo si es lineal o no es lineal. All right, guys? This concludes this video.